Being a detective in the murder squad is a thankless job. Every single day, you always arrive too late, barely able to stop some deranged person from hurting someone. But what happens when your caseload disappears overnight? When every single crime stops before it happens? And the weirdest part, nobody even knows who's stopping those crimes. It's not the detectives. It's not the police. It's something that almost doesn't even exist. The detective was late for the crime and he was expecting a bloodbath. A man had lost his mind and was firing a gun in a mall, and he was worried it was a mass shooting event. And yet, when he arrived, there were no victims, no blood anywhere. The mall denizens were confused that anything had even happened. That was how quick the crime was solved. But in the midst of the shoppers, there was one lady who just kept laughing. The detective approached her and asked if she had seen anything. "I'm not going to tell you anything," she said. "It's over. He did your job for you." The detective took notes. He was confused what she meant. He tried to ask clarifying questions, but she wouldn't tell him. She held up her finger to her lips. "Shh. He doesn't want me to tell you." The detective is stumped. He went back to the station, and the police officers were stumped too. Crimes around the city that usually would flare up around the weekend were completely disappeared. They kept getting solved with no one there. A car crash with 0 deaths. The victim transported to the hospital before he could even die. The officers were split. The slackers were thrilled. And the ones obsessed with their work like the detective were stumped, searching, confused. But only the detective had the data of the woman laughing. Somebody that didn't want to be seen, didn't want people to know. 2 months in, and the police were celebrating. They barely had to work anymore. Nobody in the entire city was committing crimes, and it wasn't out of fear. It was almost like the crime stopped right after it happened, in a split second. At this point, the police were winning awards. They were making money for doing absolutely nothing, and everybody just hoped that the streak could continue. Only the detective was left. Only the detective was asking questions. It was something that made people immensely happy, like they had been going through their whole lives and struggling only for the wool to be lifted and for their entire life to be full of hope. But still, every time the detective asked, he didn't learn more than he learned from that first encounter with the woman. "He doesn't want me to tell you anything." Finally, exasperated, the detective talked to the police chief, and the police chief yelled at him, "Drop it. He's doing a good thing for this city. Leave him alone." It felt like everybody was in on a joke that the detective didn't understand. "But he's a vigilante. We need to understand what's happening in this place." "Shut up," the chief said. The detective didn't listen. He started driving around the city at random, hoping that he could see a crime at place, hoping that he could understand what happened. A man with a knife brandished it to an innocent person, about to stab down. The detective raised his camera to take a picture when the knife-wielding person was knocked to the ground, dazed and laughing. The only thing the detective could find at the crime scene was a drop of blood. Whose blood was it? He examined the knife-wielding man, who wasn't even touched. He examined the woman who he was about to attack. She was untouched either. So whose blood was it? The detective's eyes widened. It was his blood, the blood of the person that stopped it. A deep, deep voice boomed from behind the detective. "Don't look behind you," the voice said. "Don't turn around." The detective knew. Right behind him was the thing that he had been looking for, the thing that had been solving all the crimes. And he knew that if he didn't turn around, if he didn't find out what was happening, he would be safe. But curiosity always killed the cat. The detective turned around. He was a huge, hulking black figure, twice the size of a normal man, standing almost 12 feet tall, in black spandex from head to toe, with a black cape that hung down to his ankles. The only color on his face was a white question mark. The detective was about to scream when the huge man stabbed him in the chest with a knife. The detective looked down. His blood sprayed everywhere, but no one could see them except for the hero and the detective. "I told you not to look," the man said. "I'm really sorry about this, but if people know that I exist, my powers go away." The detective tried to say something, but his mouth was filled with blood. He fell to his knees. He had one question in his mind. Why? How? The man put his masked face up to the detective's face. "I'm sorry. I really didn't want to hurt anyone, but don't you see? It's better this way." The detective went for his phone. He tried to snap a picture of the man and post it, tried to tell the world that there was some entity that was stopping these crimes, that he was controlling everything, that the people weren't safe. But it was too late. The detective fell to the ground, bleeding on the sidewalk. The hardest part is that when the new day dawned and people walked on the sidewalk, they stepped over his body. They couldn't see him, you see, because like the man that he killed him, the detective didn't exist.